All right. Welcome to today's office hours. My name is Mark Stepp. We're going to be going over relationship scoring, some of the things that is important to understand and know about the contact cross-section, and kind of see how that actually works and some of the cool things that are available built into Realvolve that makes it so powerful. So for those that don't know me, my name is Mark Stepp. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer here at Realvolve, creator of the workflow platform and this relationship scoring that we're going to be going over. This is something that I've spent on many years, 33 years in figuring out how to do database stuff and helping real estate agents see the value of their data, and the relationship scoring is something that's extremely important. So agenda today, we're going to go over to the contact cross section. How is it calculated? How is it used? Which is an important piece, and the relationship scoring part that actually feeds the cross section, which is even more important. The relationship scoring is really the guts of how the cross-section works in the way it works, but understanding the correlation between the two is extremely important. How are we scoring those contacts in your database, and why is it important to score? We'll also have some time for Q&A. Do not hesitate. If you guys don't understand something or you want more clarity on something, just chime in and let me know either through the chat or just unmute yourself and ask away. This is an open session for you guys, just however and whatever. No question is too silly or stupid, so definitely speak out. This is for you guys. So for past office hours, as always, you can go to realvolve.com/office hours, get to those sessions that are available, play them, whatever. There's a link to our actual YouTube playlist. You can get to that. Just go to realvolve.com/office hours. So let's go ahead and dive in, and actually I'm going to give you a little bit of overview, a little bit more details, and hopefully this will make sense, and you can start utilizing these things in your own day-to-day business in a much better, more informed way. So the contact cross-section is just that. It's a cross-section of your contacts, and we section them or cross-section them based off of two things, the category and the status. And we'll go into kind of more what those are, but everybody's kind of aware or knows the things about aware, know, like, and trust. Whenever you first get somebody in your database, they may be aware of you, but they don't really know you. You go through these different phases or stages of how well do you like somebody, or how well do they like you. So they got to be aware of you. They've got to start knowing you. Once they get to like, if they like you, then the probability of them doing business with you goes up. And if they trust you, that's where the repeat business and stuff actually shows up. So that part of the cross section is extremely important. The other side, the left-hand side of this, is the suspect, prospect, lead, client, and past client. So whenever somebody first comes into your database, they're coming in as a suspect. They don't necessarily know you. You don't know them. You don't know that you can help them necessarily. You just got a name and phone number maybe, and then you start working them and you prospect them, and then they turn into leads. And then ultimately the goal is to get that lead to turn into a signed either listing agreement or buyer's agreement, and make them a client. You go through the process of the transaction itself, and then ultimately they become past clients. So the goal is to kind of move them up from the bottom left of suspect aware all the way up to hopefully to past client trust. So you won't see a whole lot of numbers typically in the aware and trust corners, upper left, lower right. It shouldn't happen, but it can. And if it does, sometimes it's just a messed up numbers or messed up selection, and you need to go in there and correct that. But it's more of a case of, kind of having people kind of rotate up from the bottom left to the upper right. So that's your goal, is to kind of keep that process flowing. If you can keep that process flowing, then your business will continue to thrive. If you don't have many suspect prospects down here, and you got all of your clients and past clients up here doing things, you're going to have a slower time. You need to kind of keep these things balanced as well. But always wanting to prospect for new leads and getting those leads, getting them in there. But this is just kind of a gauge of who you need to contact when. And I'd like to treat it as kind of a fail-safe. Typically, you're going to have people in workflows, and it's going to tell you when you need to contact them. But in the event that you aren't doing those contacts properly, then they will show up here as indicators. Hey, it's time to contact them if you have not already. So understand that thought process first off. Whenever you hover your mouse over any of the squares, it's going to give you a little bit of information. It's going to give you what the cross-section name is. So in this case, I'm looking at the past client trust. So I'm actually hovering over this orange 4, and it's telling you what is the average score for that grouping of people in your database, and what is the scoring for the 4 people that are in there and where they range. And whenever you then click into that, you can see those, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But just know that you can hover over there and find a little bit of information that can be extremely useful, and I'll show you how that's used in just a little bit. The other widget that we're going to be talking about today is the R factor prediction. And this is some people look at this as like, how in the world? But it's one of those, we've done enough number crunching and enough research on how users are looking at their data, how they're doing stuff with their data, the relationship scoring. And what we do is we take all the contacts, if they're a contact in the database as a contact type. Actually, I should say it's more of a case of you've got your contacts, your farms, your personals. It does not include agents. If you've got agents or hidden or vendors, those types of contacts are excluded out. So this number that is represented here is not necessarily the same number that's in your entire contact database. But these are the likely contacts that are likely to do business with you. You got vendors and things like that will do business with you because of things, but it's not necessarily because of them needing transactions and stuff. So that's one number to understand, is that number is your users, and it is based off of how many you're the record owner on. If you're in a team, this is going to be different for each team member based off of who has record ownership. The next piece of this is the R factor, and we're going to go into this a little bit more, but it's a mathematical number on a scale of 1 to 10. The lower the number, the less relationship overall you have with your database, and that's something that you want to continually work on and bring it up. The highest I've ever seen anybody is a 9. I've never seen anybody with an actual 10 that has a real database. If you first get in and you've just got 10 people in your database and you've got them all filled in, then yeah, you're going to get a 10 there. But if you've got several hundred or thousands of contacts in your database, this is a a scoring mechanism that takes a look at all of those overall and gives you a score based off of that. And we're going to go in a little bit more detail on that as well. Just know that that's there. So with these two, the R factor and the contacts, we can then say, okay, based off of those, we can predict a certain number of transactions that you should be able to get out of your database. Are they going to be that exactly? No, not exact, but it's spooky scary how accurate, how close it can be. And then we use that number based off of your past listings and closings, your commissions off of those, and figure out, basically based off of history, we can determine what would be your predicted revenue off of that. So just kind of understand that. We're going to go into each one of those a little bit more in depth. What we want to do, though, is we want to step back and we want to say, okay, what actually builds these numbers? So whenever you go into a contact record itself, you're going to see this little donut to the right of the contact. And this we call it a widget, but it's a donut of information, and every one of them is going to look a little bit different. One of the key things that you're wanting to see here is the number on the inside. This is the relationship score for this individual contact. What is that scoring made up of is kind of what I'm going to go through and cover. This one only has three, just as an example, this only has three different things that it's built on. It's a fairly new contact, probably. It's got some time elements, it's got some category elements, and it's got some details. And we'll go into each one of those. But there are 15 different pie segments that you really want to start building on. The more pie segments, the more data you've got collected, and the more reliable that is. And what that really kind of comes down to is it's almost like a simulated friendship score or a relationship. It's simulated, obviously. It's just numbers, but it's really the best way of identifying it from multiple different factors. Like I said, there was like 15 different factors that we use to really identify it. And so with that, you can discover several things, and I'm just picking 5 things here. You can figure out what are my top 100 people in my database? How do I improve the relationship in my database? What relationships do I need to work on? And who is important to me and my team? And especially on the team, you may have an assistant that's brand new to your team, and somebody calls up and they don't know them from Adam. But if they get into the database, they look at who they are. A low score means they're fairly new, or you don't have much of a relationship. But if they've got a high score, it's like, oh, this person's important to me. I need to make sure I deal with this person best I can. And then who should I just contact next? So these are some things we're going to talk about today, and how to discover those. So like I said earlier, the relationship score is like a simulated friendship score. And I like to kind of describe it this way. Now, I can go out to Google and I can Google your name. I can find out some very basic information about you. Maybe, your name or proximity or city that you live in, some very basic information. And I can put that into the database. But does that mean that we have any kind of relationship? No, it just means I got data. And we evaluate the types of data that's getting put into it. And we see some data is just like this. It's Google type data. I can Google you and get this data. There's other fields in the database that are more like Facebook friends data, where I have your birthday, I have more personal stuff because we're friends. And we are communicating back and forth. There's some things that's happening that helps the system know that, hey, there's a closer relationship. So these two types of data are factored in, whether it's just Google data, I just grab some stuff, or maybe I've purchased, God forbid, a list of names, and I put them in, and I've got 1,000 names in my database. Just because I've got 1,000 names in my database doesn't mean I'm going to do any business with them at all, because that relationship isn't necessarily there. Now, there's definitely a something to be said about, well, we've just got to nurture them and do things, and over time it will. But that is part of building that relationship, and the more you build, the better. But you have to start with something, and what you're starting with, the data that you're putting in, is either Google data or Facebook data, or or better. So just think about that for a second. There's a term that I like to use is propinquity. And propinquity is basically, how close are you to somebody? If you are in your office and you sit physically close to somebody else, maybe you've got some cubicles or whatever, but physically you're in the physical proximity of somebody, you're probably closer to them, relationship wise. You make comments, you do things, you talk to each other a little bit more than somebody that's maybe across the office. And similar types of things is, the more you do with somebody, the more propinquity there is with that person. You do more things, and that propinquity, I used to always call it the propinquity score instead of the relationship score, and nobody ever understood that, but that's really what it comes down to. It's just what's called the propinquity effect. The tendency of individuals to form close relationships to people they repeatedly encounter. And the more you interact with somebody, you meet with them, either in a business setting or a personal setting, the more you're likely to develop a professional relationship with them. And so that's what comes down to any database, whether it's Realvolve or any of the other ones that might be out there, is making sure that you're communicating and building the relationship. The challenge is most of the other databases out there don't actually measure this and do things with it. So it's important to understand that by putting this information in, we're actually gauging this. The contact stages, like I said earlier, we're taking different various points of data, and we're collecting those in the database. And then the other things that's important, we're using those points to or the scoring piece to kind of move people through that aware, know, like, and trust. And then ultimately getting them to active client and then past client. So that contact stage that I discussed earlier, there are 15 points of the scoring mechanism. So it's not just garbage in, garbage out. If you look at other software out there, a lot of times the only thing that you're getting out of it is what you put in. If you need somebody's phone number, you need somebody's address, you can certainly get that, but it's not giving you extra information like the relationship scoring mechanism that we've got. Each contact is assigned a score overall, and it's very much like maybe a FICO score. And FICO score is constantly going up and down, it's always changing. And this is what makes Realvolve so powerful, is that simulated relationship score is always changing, and because it's always changing, you can gauge how do I need to react based off of how it's reacting to certain things. The larger the score, the stronger the simulated relationship is. The stronger the relationship, the closer you are to potentially getting a deal. So just, the more you do, that's that propinquity. We want to make sure that you are moving people through that scoring mechanism. Changes in the scores tells you who is ready to be contacted, and then you're moving them through that suspect, prospect, lead, client, past client, like I said earlier. So let's talk about the actual data points, the points at which we are doing stuff. And some of these, this is kind of some of these are a mix of things as well. So we've got a couple different things. First off, that raw data, that contact details piece, whenever you're putting in names and numbers and stuff like that, going back to the Google versus Facebook type of data, that's just that raw data. We are looking at the years known field. How long have we known this person? If they're brand new, we don't have much of a score. If we have a large number of years that we've known them, then there's going to be more. And we're going to go into a little bit more detail on each one of these. The categories, the referrals shows trust. The categories shows your own personal preference, the A, B, C, D, how you can score them on things. A lifetime value, how much money have you made off of these people from their commissions and stuff, and that lifetime value gets added in. Engagement, it's just engagement by that contact. How engaged are they with you? Bonding events, and this is one that not many people use, but it is there, is, are you having meals with, are you going to lunches or going to meals with different people? Those are scored separately, and actually a little bit higher, because if you're having a meal, you're breaking bread, you have a better relationship with somebody than somebody you're not going out to eat with. The relationship building, are you making calls? Are you doing visits? Those types of things are counted. The intensity is the importance of a task. How intense is it? Is it, if there's activities in your calendar and they've got some high importance versus low importance or no importance, there's low, medium, high, and none. Those activities are part of a scoring mechanism in the system. And if you have several high important things, more than likely those are like closings and listing appointments, things like that are extremely important. Those things are counted. Experiences, long events, if you've got several multi-day events or things with somebody, the frequency of tasks in a short amount of time. This is something where if I've got a workflow going, maybe a listing or a closing workflow, and I've got several things on the same days, the score goes up based off of that as well. There's also score decay, which means how much time has elapsed since I've done something with them. Just, if you're neglecting somebody, their score will go down. Some of the things that makes that score go up is category changes. This is your personal assignment typically. An A is better than a B or greater than a B, and B's are greater than C's, C's are greater than D's. Whenever you're thinking about that category, the importance of those, we score those differently. So if you have two people and they're identical except for the A and the B, the A is going to be a little bit higher in the score than the B. No big deal. The time, like I said, the years known, birthdays and anniversaries, are they coming up close? Those scores will go up or go down if birthdays and anniversaries are near. Recent communications, calls that I've made, notes that I've made, that communication process will make that score go up. The personal visits, recent meals, like I said, the bonding, that's things. Life events, Do you have their information on when did they get married? Do they have kids? Those types of things. That's more that Facebook data, which brings it up higher because you've got certain types of information that warrants more detail, more relationship to get that detail, I should say. Contact detail types. Just that Google versus Facebook type of stuff. Email responses. So whenever emails are sent out, if they are responding to those emails, that score goes up. If they're not responding to them, it can actually go down. Likewise, if you're not responding, so there's two-way communication pieces that are taken into account there. Current activities. Do I have something today, tomorrow, stuff like that can adjust it. Current closings, current anniversaries, and just, how many workflows. So all of these things are types of things that will help the score go up. The more I'm doing with them, the more information I'm collecting, the higher the score. Likewise, let me go ahead and make sure I've covered everything here. Scoring definitions, the time. I really kind of talked about these. I'm not sure we need to go through each one of these. It's how long have I known them? One of the things that I like to kind of relay on this one is, my best friend in high school, who was also our best man in our wedding, we've known each other for years and years. And while we don't communicate as frequently as we used to, because we've had so much time with each other, we've known each other for so long that once we do get together, we come back to the same starting point. And that same thing is not necessarily, as far as the relationship between each other, it's just like, no time is gone between each other or whatever. If you've got leads that are just coming in, you have to really nurture them and keep on them. Otherwise, that relationship goes down. So the more time you have with somebody, the more ability you have to not worry about communicating quite as much. Say it that way. So, definitely the more time you have with somebody, the more leniency we have with some of the numbers as well. The categories, those A, B, C, Ds, these are your grade, your perceived numbering system, and just knowing that the A's are the high side, the D's and none are the low sides. Stage and status. Now these, and we'll cover these, this is part of some of the rules of the contact cross-section. You do have to have a stage and a status in order for them to show up on your contact cross-section of some sort. Aware, know, like, or trust. And these are just that relationship phases that we were talking about earlier. The contact status, where they're at in the process of actually getting some kind of signed agreement or either listing agreement, buyer's agreement, or going through the closing process. This is kind of the status of what they're going through. And once you understand the relationship between those, that really helps that contact cross-section to stand out a little bit better. The contact types, and this is something that is important on that the R factor calculation. Whenever we're doing those calculations, the contacts, the farm, personal, and prospect are all used as part of that R factor. The ones that are hidden, team members, vendors, and agents are not. And that's because these are the people that are more likely to be clients of yours, where the other ones typically assist in the process. So we don't want your R factor to be reliant on people that sometimes you work with, sometimes you don't. So we're trying to help help you understand that these are the important people in your database, even though you've got others that are kind of out there to help you through processes. Referral counts. Referral counts is an important one. You may have somebody that they've only done one deal with you, possibly, and maybe they found their dream home and they just want to stay there. I mean, we've been in our house for over 30 years. Crazy. But I have referred out to our agents that we work with, depending on each of the different ones. I've referred out lots of different people based off of where they live. And that's something that is important to understand, that just because somebody does one deal with you doesn't mean they're less important than somebody that's done multiple deals, because it's the referral counts that can really help boost that. So we take that into account. The details, like we said, this really is that public, private type of data. We factor those in. Lifetime values, how much money have I made from them? And the lifetime values can be based off of referrals and stuff like that. And how much money did I make based off of some referrals? The engagement, sending and receiving communications, and that's really all forms, but any kind of messages and stuff. We used to be able to do more with Facebook messaging and stuff, and they restricted a lot of that. So some of that kind of came off, but any kind of emails and SMS, Twitter type things that are part of the Realvolve workflows, those are included. Bonding, that's just having breakfast, lunch, dinners, parties, meals, travel, things like that are part of an activities type. Those are all kind of included as well. That relationship score is, and the propinquity part of that is the important piece. How close am I? It's kind of a all-inclusive piece. The intensity, how many high important items do I have either now or coming up? The intensity can increase that score. The reply intensity. So this is one where if somebody you're sending them messages and they respond immediately, they're more intense in their reply. They're more responsive in their reply, I should say. That is something that's scored as well. Frequency, that comes down to how many activities do I have or have had in the past 14 days to 14 days, next 14 days. And based off of those numbers, if I'm doing a lot of activities because of a listing or because of a closing, that frequency of activities in a short amount of time will make those scores go up. The score decay, we talked about that briefly. There is a mechanism for scoring that. Basically, it really kind of comes down to the number of months of time that you've neglected them. So if you're not doing something with somebody over time, their score will continue to go down. Definitely looking at that. Things that can make the score go down, changing them from an A to a B, from a B to a C, for whatever reason, if you're doing stuff. So definitely watch that. Non-activity with a contact over time, we talked about that. Missing birthdays and anniversaries. If you're not sending them something, dealing with birthdays, anniversaries, without an action of some sort, that can cause the score to drop. Emails not being opened. If you're sending them an email and the email doesn't get opened, then that scoring can go down. They're not interested in you. So maybe instead of just sending them emails or text messages, that you make a phone call or something. And are they not replying at all based off of the counts? So those are just some of the things that's in there. The question then becomes kind of, what is that extra effort that I have to do to make these relationship scores work? Well, you're entering data into the database, and whether you're using Realvolve or some other database, you'd still be doing that. You're adding events, you're adding appointments to your calendar. Again, that's something that would be done. You're sending and receiving text messages, and you're updating the data periodically. So you're not doing anything extra to do this. Realvolve handles this, the scoring mechanism for you. You're already doing everything, and that's an important piece. That's what comes down to that garbage in, garbage out that we talk about with other databases. If all they're giving you back is what you've put in, garbage in, garbage out, then it's not helping you. But what we're doing is we're taking that data, we're assimilating it, we're scoring it, we're doing things with that data in order to give you extra information and extra content that's important to know. And you can see this is one where, actually, let me go into a full screen. I probably should have been doing this the whole time. You can see here, it kind of shows you the percentages of that score. Where are my points, my scores mainly at? So each one of these is going to be a little bit different. And as you move your mouse over these, it will actually show you the actual score number for that particular segment as well. Just know that that's there. So the biggest challenge that is out there for most CRMs is you only get out what you personally put in. You have to schedule these reminders yourself and do things yourself, where we're actually pulling this information from the data. And if you're scheduling contacts every 90 days, they may be gone by the time those 90 days comes around. With the scoring mechanism, and you can see, the score drop for whatever reason. Maybe you need to contact them sooner than every 90 days or whatever. And that contact cross section will draw that out, bring that to your attention. Your system needs to give you information without you doing all the input, and you need a system that monitors the change. So that's important. So kind of taking a step back, what we do is we take all those contacts, all the people in the contacts, personal, farm, those four categories, and we put those into that contact section, and we create this R factor. We're looking at the overall score. Now, something that, and I alluded to this earlier, if you've bought a list of contacts and you put them into your database, you just import a bunch of names, it doesn't mean you have any kind of relationship with them whatsoever. Your score is going to be extremely low. The more you do with them, the more you have activities, the more you send things out, the more data you collect, all those scores start changing for each individual person. And based off of those scores going up and down and how they factor in is what that R factor is. That relationship factor is what that R stands for. Your R factor is what determines the potential for doing predicted transactions. And the higher the score, the more likely you are to get a certain number of transactions, and based off of how that works. The other thing you can do is on each one of these widgets on your dashboard, if you click on them, they do kind of flip around and kind of show you some numbers. This one is not a good example actually of actual numbers. This is probably one of the trainer database items, and we just did a screen. But definitely look at your numbers, look at your R factor. If your R factor is low and maybe you're brand new to Realvolve, then don't worry. It takes time for it to, learn things about what you're doing, how you're doing, and it takes time to get that R factor up. If you have a high R factor, amazing, great. Means you're doing the right things to do business, and you're building those relationships with each of those people. And just realize that just because you've got a lot of contacts in your database doesn't mean you're going to have a high R factor. It can actually work against you because you've got so many people that you need to deal with. I've seen people with 60,000 names and have a low R factor because they're not doing anything with those names other than just sending out blast emails or things like that, and they're neglecting a huge number of their contacts, and they've got a really low R factor. I've seen people with 500 names having a large R factor and doing a lot more transactions than somebody with a large number of contacts. So the relationship is what's important there, and making sure that you continue to work on that. The higher the R factor, the more predicted transactions that will have. You can use your past commissions to predict that revenue, that based off of what your past is, as far as now. That's the other thing is if you don't have any old listing information in there, we will use a simulated like 3% number, but 3% of what, we have to kind of do some magic to try to get that number, and that can be a little iffy at best. But the longer you're using Realvolve, the more accurate it becomes. There is a golden ratio for those that kind of the number of transactions in and in this case, C is not the speed of light, it's the number of contacts. I'm not sure if you guys are physicists at all. I dabble in physicist stuff as well. We talk about Q, which is a quality of the database. We multiply that times a factor divided by 100, and this is kind of how we calculate this. And it's uncanny how many people we've talked to, how close we are, just using this ratio. It's just crazy to me, but it actually works. So kind of interesting. So going back to what are some of the questions or things that we can answer? Well, we can look at our scores. We can filter the contacts, with a custom filter and see who has those high scores. So we can see contacts very easily, where they're at. How can I improve my relationships? So we'll just verify some of those scores. Looking at the average scores and seeing, based off of those averages, who should I be contacting, and actually gives you those contacts right here in the cross section. You just click on the square, it brings up the contact, and you can start doing stuff with them. Which relationships do I need to work on? If they are in the like trust and they've got a lower score, less than 30, you probably need to work on them. You need to make sure that you're doing stuff with the people. More communication, more whatever, calling them, doing things. And, who's important to me and my team, just verifying those averages. And somebody with a high number is important to you. If you look at the actual overall score and identifying who is important, those average scores can really help them. Who do I contact next? Definitely anybody in this contact cross section, you need to be contacting. They're being neglected, or there's something about them that you need to deal with. And your goal every day really is to look at the contact cross section and contact each and every person and get everything back down to 0 ultimately. I've seen numbers where there's hundreds of people in different ones, and I can tell right away that they aren't working their database the way they should or could. This is kind of a kind of the process that happens whenever you come into your contact cross section on your dashboard. You can hover over it. You can see some scores. You can see that there are 3 contacts that I need to deal with. You click on that, it opens up a section where you can see some more information, what their scores are, how long has it been since I've contacted them, and which kind of gives you a clue as to, you know, why I probably should be contacting them. And then you can click on them to get even more details to make phone calls, to change dates or whatever, and go into a little bit more in depth just by clicking on those. But you know, you're looking at some average scores, where they at. If they're way below the average scores, then definitely something that you need to, you know, get in contact with them for one reason or another. There are some rules to the contact cross section. People will not be included in your contact cross section if you don't have these 3 fields dealt with. You have to have a stage, either aware, know, like, or trust. In this case, you know, the trust aside. If you set it to none, it will not show up. It just won't. We don't have a none option. So you have to set a stage. You also have to set the status, either suspect, prospect, lead client, or past client. It has to have one of those. And then also has to have one of these dates. And we always use the most current one of the dates, either the last time I called them or the last personal visit. We do not look at, as part of the cross section, we do not look at SMS. We don't look at email. You know, these are things that you might be sending out information to people, but just because you're sending it doesn't mean that they're looking at it, they're reading it, or anything else. And we purposely said, okay, you need to be either calling or personally visiting somebody and dealing with them. Now, you know, if you call them, the date should auto update, or you can change the date in the contact cross section, or you can add a note and update that last call date, you know, whatever. So, you know, it's very easy to update this on a regular basis, keeping it updated. And what's important there is we are using that as part of the key indicator as far as a count for the next time. So you need to have those set up, and then you can go in under settings, set default fields, and then that opens up this kind of section under the dashboard section of the set default fields settings area. You can identify how frequently you personally want to be communicating with stuff as kind of a fail-safe. So for suspects, I want to contact them at least every 2 days. For prospects, I'll give, you know, an extra day. I'm wanting to keep on them. Leads, I want to do every 7 days. If they're a client, typically you're going to have some kind of something happening with a workflow. So, you know, keeping them, if they're current clients, currently going through a listing or a transaction of some sort, you're probably communicating with them on a regular basis anyway. So this shouldn't ever be a challenge. But you know, you can say, well, if I don't contact them at least every week, every 7 days, then bring them up on my contact cross section. Then we kind of jump out, and I'll explain this. We kind of jump down to the past clients and give it a number. Now, anybody that is a past client, we do also differentiate them based off of their categories. So if they're just a plain past client and you've not categorized them, that's you basically are saying, I want to contact any of those people every 120 days. If they're an A client, the category is A, then I want to do that maybe every 60 days. B's every 90 days. The C's and past clients, they're the same. D's, they're maybe less important. And I've even seen people where, it's like a category D might be treated as if I've done a transaction with them. It was a pain in the rear and I don't want to do it again. I'm going to classify them as a D. I don't want to deal with D's. And you can actually put a 0 in there and they will not show up. So, that's a way. I'm not sure that's the best way, but you may want to deal with them that way. Otherwise, maybe it's just out a little bit further for D's, depending on the number of people you've got, the time you've got to make phone calls and do relationship building. You may want to adjust these. So, set them how you want, but basically, the number of days that this last call date here or last personal visit information is what determines how frequently do they show up based off of these numbers in my contact cross section. If it's been more than 2 days since I've either personal visited or called, and a call may just be, I left a message, but you did something to make an effort to communicate with them besides just an email or text, then that if it's been more than 2 days, it'll show up on the contact cross section if they're a suspect. If they're a client, 7 days. If it's a past client, then 120 days. So kind of go about it that way. I hit you guys with a lot. We've got about 7 minutes. Any questions about any of that? Did any of that resonate or help you understand anything?
Hey, Mark, this is Greg. If you send a mass email out, will that automatically update the contact field?
So we don't consider mass emails a one-to-one communication. I mean, if you could send out a newsletter or something like that, it's just not there. Now, what you can do if you really want to is you can go in and do a mass update of the contacts through maybe come up here and you do some form of mass communication. You select that and you can add the note, and then at that point add the date, but it does not do it automatically because it's really not a great form of communication as relationship building. That makes sense?
So we're talking mostly transactional emails then?
It's transactional emails or phone calls, personal visits. It's really what it really comes down to. You're doing stuff one-on-one with them. So whenever you're coming to the dashboard, just come back here, and this is kind of important. So here's, as you're moving your mouse over, you can see the different scorings and stuff. Whenever you click in here, you can see the different names. If somebody that is on the list, you can see their scores. You can click in and get more detail. From here, I can click on the name and it'll open up as a separate record. And so I can do things here. If I come in here, I add a note, I can update the phone call, the phone date, make some kind of comment, and then at that point, the contact date is filled in. So, those types of things as you're making your communication and stuff. Once I do that, then in this case, once I come back out, it still shows there. May take a second for it to recalculate. It takes them off the list. So your goal every day is to come in here, look at the person, and you can just come here and say, well, I did call them. It was, last Wednesday or, whatever, and go back And April 4th. Oh, I say, there we go. That particular record was like 2018, and I just went back when it was showing the actual date. So once I do that, then Sue Seller went away. So your goal every day is just to, kind of go through these, look at any of them that are in here. You can go to their contact record. You can make phone calls from here. You can send them text messages. You can send them emails. But each and every day you do this, then that cleans up this list. And the more you do, so now it's brought it from 10 down to 8. The goal here is to always, have zeros in here. Ultimately, it's kind of a daily goal of making sure that you've got your activities taken care of, and you're down to zeros on these if you can. And if you find yourself on one of those days where you're just twiddling your thumbs, you're not sure what you need to do, this is the perfect place to come and see, who do I really need to communicate with? It's telling me these are the people that are high on the list. And if you've not communicated with them in a long time, shoot them a phone call, send them a personal note, or something that updates that record. Again, you do have to do personal note or a personal visit or call, but you can base that off of even leaving messages or whatever. But definitely a way to do that. And then what happens then is, and this is my trainer database, so I don't use it regularly, and so you can see my R factors are very low on this currently, and just because we've kind of neglected this. But the more you do with the contacts that you do have in here, the higher that score goes up, the higher the predicted transactions, and then based off of your past transactions, it will then calculate your predicted revenue. Make sense? Any other questions? Going once, going twice. All right, guys, that's all I've got today. We've actually kept it on time this time. So if there's anything else that I can do for you, certainly reach out. Be happy to answer any questions you've got. Have a great day. Bye.